We got an SEC showdown in Starkville this weekend between LSU and Mississippi State. Grace Armington here with Bryce Koon of Geaux247 and Steve Robertson of jeanspage.com. The road hasn't been kind to LSU lately. Since 2020, the Tigers are 8-12. That's a record of 400 away from Death Valley. Now they have to deal with all those cowbells. They're looking to win their third straight against the Bulldogs. So let's break down this game a little bit further. Guys, we'll start with Jayden Daniels here. We all know about his athletic ability and potential there, but he's 4-4 on the road with 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, an average of 3 sacks per game in the last 5. Of course, he had that big bounce back performance against Grambling. But Bryce, which Jayden Daniels can we expect to see against an SEC opponent?
Yeah, Grace, I mean, that's kind of the big question coming into this. I mean, look, you mentioned Daniels' athleticism, and look, we all know what he can do with his legs. But, you know, if LSU wants to take that next step, and that was something that was talked about all summer, all fall camp, it has to be with his arm. And so, you know, heading into this matchup against Mississippi State, who, you know, gives a lot of different looks defensively, you know, Daniels is going to lean on his legs. That's who he is. You're not going to take that away from him. But, you know, hitting some of these receivers in stride, leading these guys, and being a little more accurate with the football, it's kind of where he has to go. Coach Kelly talked about it after the game against Grambling on Saturday and said, look, he's done a lot of things great, but we, as a staff, have sat here and said he's also left some throws out there on the field. And so, like you mentioned, on the road, an 11 a.m. kickoff with the Cowbells, what can he do in Starkville that could really take this LSU offense, you know, into that next level?
Yeah, you know, last year, Jayden Daniels was the difference in this ball. I mean, you know, for 2.5 quarters, LSU offensively did absolutely nothing. About 2 minutes and 18 seconds to go, Jayden Daniels decides to play a little backyard football and gets LSU on the board, makes 13 game. And then from there, LSU began to kind of exert its dominance there in the second half and scored 21 points in the fourth quarter. After what State saw last weekend from Jayden Daniels of Arizona, they've probably got some opportunities to kind of clean some things up because Daniels kind of ran at will. State got him on the ground one time other than when he dove, but that's what ran him out of bounds, only sack of the game. So I'm sure when Daniels watches this game tape, he's going to see there are some opportunities in the middle of the field that State begins to lose containment at times. That's really the X factor of this thing for me is, you know, what can Jayden Daniels do with his legs? I think that'll be the difference in the ball game again this year.
Some questions about the passer on the other side as well, though not really by his own fault. Steve, Will Rogers had only 17 pass attempts in that overtime win at Arizona. State running the ball on over 60% of their snaps through the first 2 games. So how do you expect this offense to open up a little bit against an LSU secondary that is vulnerable?
Well, Kevin Barbay admitted this week that he had been kind of conservative in his play calling, especially in the second half of that Arizona game. I look for things to be a lot different this week because Barbay wants to kind of target mismatches at favorable Bulldogs. That LSU secondary has proven to be very shaky. There should be some chance to make some plays down the field. I think Will Rogers is a guy, too, that really wants to be the guy. He doesn't just want to be a serviceable, you know, game manager. He wants to be a guy that can be a star. And this is a marquee type game. This could be the difference between a really good year and a great year. And in the second half of that ball game against Arizona, when the game was on the line, State goes empty, and Rogers basically runs the air raid concept, gets him right down the field, and retakes the lead. So I suspect you're going to see Mississippi State win the football with a lot more regularity. You might even see Will Rogers calling some plays.
Yeah, look, I mean, unshaken and proven, I mean, is kind of the 2 words that come to mind when you talk about this game for the LSU secondary. That, look, let's just be honest, you're probably not going to face receivers of the caliber that Florida State had in that week 1 matchup when the size and skill. But, look, you have a chance here against better competition to kind of prove yourselves. And there's a lot of names that have been in a revolving door for this LSU secondary. I mean, Andre Sam, Major Burns on the back end. Can the safeties be the quarterback of this defense? Greg Brooks kind of in that nickel role. You know, what does he look like? You're still trying to find answers on the outside. Deuce Chestnut, that was a guy that was really solid sought after in the portal, made the trip to LSU from from Syracuse. All these things saying there's some names, but this game is a proving ground for a defense that I think expected to be better. But look, Brian Kelly said that this is still a work in progress. I don't think that you leave Starkville saying, here's my two guys on the outside, they're going to play cornerback. In reality, you want a better feeling, but for a guy like Will Rogers, look, he's a smart, talented quarterback. He knows how to pick apart a good defense, and, LSU's lacking on the back end. So it's really going to be up to that secondary to kind of step up to the challenge on the road and establish, what they want to do early on.
Okay, so I heard a work in progress, a lot of questions about both offenses, so a lot of things to watch here, but how about a specific player to watch, the X factor here who could potentially be the difference maker in this game? Bryce, who should we look at?
Yeah, I don't know if under the radar is necessarily what you would say with this kid's name, but Denver Harris. After not being available against Florida State at all, he started the game against Grambling State. Now, listen, he gave up a touchdown catch, but it was good coverage. And, Brian Kelly talked about this, with the buy-in. Is Harris where he needs to be, essentially, from maybe the mental and the emotional standpoint? Well, he's probably getting there. But when you see Harris and you see the tape on him, this is a kid with an immense amount of talent. And in a room where you just need some guys, you need some dudes back there to make some plays, Harris seems to be the most likely candidate. And against a team like Mississippi State that I think is going to be a little bit more balanced, Steve mentioned with Kevin Barbay wanting to be more balanced this weekend, Denver Harris has a chance to get his name on the map and establish himself, as a go-to corner and a go-to option in this secondary for LSU.
I'm going to give you a player to watch and maybe a matchup to watch as well. Xavion Thomas is a guy from Louisiana. Wanted to go to LSU, never got the offer. Xavion's a guy who was an All-American last year as a punt returner. He has not played much at all. He didn't play at all against Southeastern. Played about a dozen snaps against Arizona, had the one big punt return that set up the score on the opening drive of the second half for Mississippi State. He is expected to be close to 100% and will be full go in this ball game. This guy that brought a big punt back last year against Georgia, I think he's a guy to really watch, not just because of the fact that he is one of the best kick returners in the country, but this is a guy I think has got a chip on his shoulder a little bit about the fact that LSU didn't take him. I think he'd like to be able to get a little revenge against them. And he mentioned earlier, Greg Brooks played in Nick. That is a matchup with Tulu Griffin being in the squad. And Greg Brooks, a former Mississippi State commitment, he went to Arkansas, transfers to LSU, so he's well-traveled with a lot of different school colors in his closet. But he's going to have to defend who may be Mississippi State's most impressive playmaker in the passing game, and that's Tulu Griffin. That is a matchup I think could be very significant when Mississippi State has the ball. Greg Brooks versus Tulu Griffin.
All right, great rivalry here. Bryce Koon and Steve Robertson, thanks for breaking it down for us. And remember to subscribe to Geaux247 and jeanspage.com for the latest on football and recruiting all season long.